Welcome to the Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media, the podcast professionals. This is a podcast about the story of Australia's men and women, the coaches that we give the responsibility to develop our players and teams. In the main, these stories haven't been told, so sit back, listen and enjoy. We are lucky enough today to have John Aloisi with us. Obviously, an incredible playing career through the NSL, 15 years in Europe, come back, over 500 games for club and country, played in a World Cup, an Asian Cup, Confederations Cup, Oceania Cup, in the runners-up medal with Osasuna in the Spanish Cup as well. But we're not here to talk about his playing career. So John came back to Australia and started his coaching career at Melbourne Heart in the U team, the senior team, and then 3 fantastic years at Brisbane Roar. Long introduction. Welcome, John Aloisi.
Thanks for having me on, Gaz.
My pleasure, mate. You're in Sydney preparing for tomorrow's Saturday.
Sunday morning.
Sunday morning here, yeah. I'm at Stamford Bridge. I flew over to London. I got out of Melbourne. and if you believe that, I got a second-hand car for sale as well. And in true Victorian manner, I've taken my mask off. I did have my first AstraZeneca jab today, so assuming all goes well, I won't fall off my chair. But if I disappear sideways, you just know that I've had a reaction. So welcome along, John. It's a great pleasure and an honour to have you here. Can I jump in and just say I was going to say, when you go to introduce someone that talks on a sports show, the word commonly used banded around is pundit, and I'm like, it's a really, really interesting thing. So I'm going to call you an armchair coach nowadays. Is that okay?
Actually, I don't mind that because I find it strange that I'm, I have to call myself a pundit or a TV pundit. That I just love talking about the game in general, and I can look at it at a different side because a lot of the time I'm talking to or with people that haven't been coaches. So I can sit there and say, well, this is what the coach might be trying to do, and this is where he's coming from. So, I enjoy it. Watching, Champions League football and talking about it is great. And I can't wait to watch your beloved Chelsea against Manchester City. I think it's a really good matchup. Both sides that like to play the football the right way. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. But Chelsea, I think, have got the upper hand only because they've beaten them on the last 2 occasions. And I think that will play on the players' minds a little bit at Manchester City.
Hopefully, mate, because if Manchester City the way Manchester City play, it's very, very difficult for anyone to stop them. I just love it when teams are successful and just play the game in let's call it a simple manner, but it's just so beautiful and pretty to watch.
Yeah, that's right. Look, Guardiola's done it at nearly every club he's been to. Play a great way of football, and when you're successful playing that way, it rubs off on the rest of the world of football. Because if you sort of get success through playing a defensive style of football, then the rest of the world try and follow that way. So I'm glad that 2 teams that like to play possession based and good possession, and not just for possession's sake, are in the final.
No, amen. Let's hope it's a good one, and it'd be nice to see the Blue Boys bring one home. Oh, sorry, my version of blue, the darker blue, not the sky blue. Johnny, this isn't about your playing career, but maybe let's start there, because you made your debut, I think, as a 15, 16-year-old at Adelaide City.
15-year-old, yeah. 15-year-old at Adelaide City. I had Zoran Matic as my coach, look, I was looking back now, I would say Zoran was ahead of his time. A lot of things that Zoran was doing back then, people and coaches still do today. Were patterns of play, which I hadn't heard of, back then. And Zoran was doing it, and you could really notice it when Adelaide City would play. You sort of knew what they were going to do, but because they did it so well, it was hard to stop them. And Zoran was very successful, so I was grateful now that that I look back, that probably helped me develop as a player. But I only played one National League game. I played a lot of Ampol Cup games back then. And then from there, I moved to the Institute of Sport with Ron Smith and Steve O'Connor, and they really honed down your skills individually, especially in your position. And I learned a lot at the Institute of Sport, and it was a great learning upbringing, really, when I look back, that set me up for my career.
Yeah, John, I had the honour of working with Ronnie at the AIS for a couple of years as well, and I just finished my playing career and rolled in as his assistant coach, and I was blown away. I knew Ronnie well. I learned to understand just how good he was as a teacher. Of players and coaches. He helped develop an incredible number of coaches through it as well. But how much time was really spent on helping players develop really good behaviours that would suit them? Then they could go and play anywhere in any system because they had great behaviours and understood what that meant to be able to play. Do you think that's a fair summary?
Yeah, it is. So Ron really taught you the principles of the game, so that you could actually play in any system. So with, say, for instance, a striker, he would actually look at what sort of characteristics you had as a striker, and you develop that way. Because Mark Viduka was more of a striker that he was very good with his back to goal. So Absolutely. He honed in on making Mark improve even more in that aspect. And whereas say myself or other players, Ron would teach us to actually see the ball, see the defender. And so when you're receiving the ball, you can actually, if he's too close, you can actually run in behind him, or, you can receive the ball and face your defender and start to run at him. So all those basic principles were Ron, and I'm only talking about from my position, that was so important, because then when you went to another level, you play different systems. And so it was more about learning your role as a player, and understanding, how you can improve and do well. But what Ron was really good at was not only the teaching on the field, was also the analysis. Because I would say that it probably towards the end of my career, we started to do analysis over in Europe. And that was, when I was close to 30 years old. So again, Ron Smith was way ahead of his time, because I was only 16 when I was doing, individual analysis with Smudger and with Steve O'Connor. So I remember them cutting up footage and showing, Gary Lineker, his movement in the box, and this is how he's finding his space in the box. And look, when the player's about to cross the ball, look where he's on the shoulder of the defender, and he can see the cross, it nips in front of him. And they're things that I took with me throughout my career.
Yeah, look, receiving the ball facing forwards as often as you could, and that Gary Lineker speciality of sitting on the shoulder, he was just a master, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
And that's what intrigued me, that I went a couple of years before then, and Ronnie would sit me down and say, "What's this game? And what's this game in the World Cup? And look at the strikers." And I couldn't believe that I'd like Dukes. I'd spent my career as a central striker with my back to goal, looking to eventually get to run forwards. And he's saying all the best strikers in the world are facing forwards. And I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm watching football. How comes I'm not seeing this? It's just absolutely intrigued me. So no, I get it. Let's get going into some of these questions. So you finished your playing career. You came back, Central Coast Mariners, Sydney FC, where you had success with both of those clubs. A brand new club in Melbourne Heart, which was fantastic, and all power to them. They've just won, as Melbourne City now, they've just won their first premiership, which is fantastic for them. So all power. That's been a long journey. How did you transition from playing into coaching?
Well, I already had in mind in the last few years of my career that I'd like to go down the field of coaching. Of course, you don't know if you will enjoy it or how it will go. And, you've got an idea of what you would like to do, and you start to write down, what coaches you liked, what were their good things that you learned from them, what things that you probably didn't like about them, and also you start to watch the game a little bit in a different way than when you're just a player.
Yeah.
So I started to do my coaching licenses when I was still playing. I went over to the UK to London and did my level 2, which is like your C license, and then did my B license over there, and then eventually my A, and then did my pro here in Australia, the AFC Pro license. So I really, my last year of playing at Melbourne Heart, John Van Skip was the coach, Ante Milicic and Jesper Olsen were the assistant coaches, and they would include me in some of the coaching meetings, and which was, I was really fortunate to start already as a player. And then towards the end of that season, I had to start to do, because we didn't have a youth team back then, we had to build one, and I was going to be their first youth team coach. So I had to hold trials, and I was still playing, but it was a good first step into coaching. And then once I retired, it was already there. My youth team was formed, and then I would be one of the assistants, second assistant with the first team, then the first team coach at the youth team. So that was my first step into coaching, and I enjoyed it, and I learned a lot very early on and very quickly, because I was mornings with the first teams, afternoons with the youth team, and then it was back down to earth in terms of when we would travel overseas over to interstate to actually play. It's different from when I was playing at the highest level in Europe, that you had someone that will carry your boots. I was carrying balls, I was carrying the crutches, the bags, and so it was very much back down to earth, and you're starting from the bottom.
Yeah, no, that's the glamour of coaching. You don't know what you don't know when you're taking a coaching job, do you?
Yeah, no, that's right.
Johnny, having had these conversations now for a few months, it's really interesting, because I'd never pondered the transition. I, like you, finished, I'm going to call it an elite playing career, or for me, a part-time one, as opposed to you, an illustrious professional career. But you transition, it seems to people outside, fairly seamlessly and fairly easily, from playing into coaching at a good level, because there seems to be opportunities there. Whereas for some other people, like Joe Montemuro, doesn't have that elite playing career and becomes, I'm going to call it a career coach, which is probably the wrong term, but starts off coaching juniors, at a lot lower level, and it takes a period of time, a bit like Alan Stajic. It takes them a while to come through to the very top echelons of it. That being said, how important was that first season for you to work in that youth level, to really start to learn your craft and understand some of the things and get some of those mistakes that we all make in the early days out of the way?
Yeah, it was very important. And look, everyone's got a different path, of the way they make their way into whatever career path in terms of coaching, whether you say career coach, or whether it's from grassroots through juniors, through academies up to first team, because that's what some coaches would like to achieve. Sometimes you're fortunate that you've actually played at a certain level, that you've had very good coaches that you can already fall back on some of those experiences, and some that didn't play the game at a very, very high level will learn more through hours and hours of coaching. But I actually think that everyone learns through hours of coaching. And so that first year was really important. So it was just important to make sure that you're prepared. Your preparation is key for a training session, for a microcycle, macrocycle, all those things, which you take it for granted when you're playing. You don't understand that side of things, and the tactical side, your substitutions, when not to do them, sometimes when you're coming up against a team, or when you've travelled, sometimes with the youth team you're travelling up to Brisbane the morning of the game, and all of a sudden it's nearly 90% humidity capability, do you need to change your style a little bit and to understand how the players might be feeling. So all those little things and details you're learning, and I think that was really important. But the thing that you probably don't learn until you're really in the hot seat is your dealings with the hierarchy of a football club. Because when you're at youth team level, you're very much coaching and leading that group. When you go into the head coaching role, there's a lot more aspects that actually go on.
Do you think you can, as much as you knew about the game, as much as you had experience in the game, do you reckon you're 100% prepared for that first head coaching role?
I don't think any coach is 100% prepared until you're in that role. And, Paddy Casnorbo spoke about it at the beginning of this season. He said that, he actually did quite a few years assistant with the first team. He was the head coach of the W League side at Melbourne City. And he said nothing prepared me, for that head coaching role, because there's things that come at you that you're just not expecting, because you don't see it as an assistant as much. So, I still think that, you're always learning. It doesn't matter when you're in a role. I think over the years, you'll always keep on learning and improving and dealing with situations differently or better, or because we also know that what works today doesn't necessarily work tomorrow. So there are things that was I ready? Well, not 100%, because I don't think you can be. Was it the right decision to take the job? I felt it was, and I still think that it was a very good experience for me, even though I struggled in results wise. I think that you learn a lot when you're probably not succeeding as much, and I did learn a hell of a lot in that first year and a half as a head coach at Melbourne Heart.
Yeah, no, I really like that, John. I think I don't think there's too many people. I don't think there's too many coaches in too many sports learn a lot when they're winning. Maybe if you win every week, maybe you have to get better at learning and tweaking them. But there's nothing draws your focus like losing and then losing 2 or 3 in a row, because it's obviously dangerous territory in coaching as well. It's almost bizarre, isn't it, that a coach that's losing is learning perhaps the most, yet they're the most at risk of losing their position. So
yeah, no, that's right. And look, again, you want to, of course, you need short-term success when you're a coach, because you need the people that have given you the job and also your players and the supporter base to actually believe in you, and that's a good way of actually moving forward a lot quicker. But if your career path, or you want to be a coach for a long period, you need to be able to deal with these situations. And if it happens early in your career, then it's not a bad thing necessarily, because you learn once you get going. Here in Australia, we're a little bit it's unfortunate because there's not a lot of coaching roles. But overseas, especially in Spain, Italy, even in England, is that they say you're not a real coach until you get the sack, and it's an interesting way of thinking about it. And they go, because then what yourself, how you deal with those pressures, how you deal, with your job on the line, how do you recover from it, because your decision making shouldn't waver in terms when you're having that pressure. You should still be very clear in what you're trying to do. If the fan base or the media are saying he should be playing this player or playing that player, you see the players every single day. You know everything that's going on every single day. They don't. They're going to have their opinion, but if you're clear, and it's not easy to be clear, because when you're feeling that pressure, people can also start to make decisions that aren't necessarily the right ones. So I felt that was good for me, because I came to understand that I can deal with that sort of side of things, and that pressure. And ended up losing my job, but it prepared me for my next job.
Yeah. And that roll on to Brisbane, where you had 3 fantastic years. I think you finished third, and 6 made the finals in all of those years. And then that flips around because you walked away from that. I don't want to dig down into why here, but I'm going to guess having a private owner of a football club in the structure we have in Australia that lives in another country is a difficult thing to do. But how difficult was that for you when you know how rare those jobs are to say, well, I'm done here?
It was very difficult. First of all, like I mentioned, how my Melbourne Heart, situation and my experience there helped me with Brisbane Roar, because at Melbourne Heart, I didn't know at the time they were trying to sell the club, and eventually they sold it as probably a couple of months after I was sacked. But what we were struggling in terms of finding a training field. The football budget had dropped by nearly $1 million from when John Van Skip was involved, and all these things, was new to me, and I didn't know, that could happen, or how do I deal with this situation, and so I was learning along that way. And then when the Brisbane Roar job came about, it prepared me, because they were in a pretty bad situation financially. The CEO just before I arrived had walked. So we had no CEO the day I arrived. The chairman that signed me ended up walking 3 days later, and so I was left there in the lurch, going, and we haven't even got a training facility, because we just got kicked out of a training field, which was Ballymore, because we hadn't paid the bills. So the players hadn't been paid their super for over a year. And so these are all things that was happening as I signed at Brisbane Roar. I sort of knew the position they were in, but I thought, well, it's another opportunity in coaching. I really liked the squad that I was going to inherit with 1, 2, 3 more signings. I thought that we could have a very good squad to compete. And so I was able to, first thing, go get a training facility that will be up to a level that we can call it sort of a professional level. Make sure I get the FFA involved in and the PFA in sorting out the players' super. So already I'm gaining a trust from the players that I'm not just going to allow this to happen. Let's try and move forward with this together. So that helped a lot, that experience at Melbourne Heart. But the first year ended up going pretty well on the field. There were still some issues off the field. In the 3.5 years that I was at Brisbane Roar, and I'm still the longest serving coach at Brisbane Roar, so which is quite funny in itself. I never met the owner once. And so that was tough, because you're not really understanding what direction the club want to head into, what do they want, what's the big picture. So the first thing I did was just mainly focus on getting the first team right and prepared and ready to move and try and have a good A-League season. And we were very unlucky that we, if we beat Melbourne Victory in the last day, which we drew 0-0, we would have won the Premier's Plate, and would have put us in a really good position to make the grand final. And in the major semi-final, we ended up losing to Western Sydney Wanderers in an epic 5-4 game. We were 3-0 up, so that's one that lives with me.
still substitutions haunt you, right?
Yeah, well, my subs actually were okay. They actually brought me back into the game, because we ended up 3-0 up. We ended up going 4-3 down. And then my subs ended up combining to make it 4-4, went to extra time. He lost 5-4, but it was an amazing game. And those fine margins, could have been a really good season into an outstanding season. But the second year we had the other difficulties that were behind, traveling in the Champions League, and a club that really hasn't got untold money. The travel commitments were pretty hard going. So I remember we were traveling from Brisbane to it was Ulsan in Korea, and so we had to go on 2 separate flights. Some players going at one time, some at the other time. and then, some through Singapore, some, directly to Korea, then a bus it from Seoul to Ulsan, and it ended up taking, some of us 3 days to get there. It was things that you don't see on the outside, you only see on the inside. So, but in the end, what kept me longer than I should have probably stayed was the playing group. And the support staff I had around me. But in hindsight, I knew after the third season, when we finished sixth and we made finals, I should have actually walked then, because the direction of the club was going in a different direction to what I wanted it to go into. And I ended up making that decision a few months into the season, because I just said it's not going to keep on working in the way that I would like it to. And but it was a hard decision, because I loved coaching. I still love coaching, and especially that group and that club. I really enjoyed it. But in the end, it was the right decision for me to walk away.
Yeah. Good on you. I think principles, you mentioned principles of playing with Ronnie earlier on in the conversation. And as people, it's a life skill in general, isn't it? There is nothing worse than working in a place that you don't enjoy going there every day. And I don't care whether that's football or the leisure industry or sweeping the streets. It doesn't really matter. It should be a place where we can go and love to be and enjoy everything we do. So
no, that's right. And the thing is, Gaz, that that's also an art in coaching, is knowing the right time to go into a job and knowing the right time to leave a job. And I think that over time you will learn that. I talk about your instincts, your gut feels. Sometimes with that experience, you learn to trust your gut that little bit more. And I look at now, Gus Hiddink was a perfect example. He knew the right time to step into a football club or to a national team role, and the right time to leave. But that was after years of experience. And only recently, Antonio Conte walked out of Inter Milan after winning the Serie A. He still had a contract, but he just didn't like, obviously, what he was feeling at the football club, and thought it was the right time to leave. So that becomes an art that I think is very important in coaching as well. Yeah.
The challenge here in Australia, of course, is just with the lack of jobs, the next opportunity, and we hope that comes around for you sooner rather than later. But Johnny, let's change tack a little bit. Who had the most significance on you as a player from a coaching perspective? Or there may be a couple of those people, of course.
Yeah, let's. It's a really good one, because I think every coach that I had, I learned something from. Whether it's like individually or like the teams that we're playing for, the pressure situations, how they dealt with it. I spoke very like before about Ron Smith. I think as an individual, he helped not only myself, but anyone that was there a lot. But it was also the environment that we were in, because, we were all together, and then, in our spare time, we'll go into the gym and kick the ball around. We didn't need any coaches there, because that was our environment that, we wanted to keep on, learning, improving. And so we'd go and do it ourselves. But I think if a coach can create a good environment, that also really helps. We talked about enjoying going to work. There were some coaches, and I won't name names because it's not right of me, but I just didn't like going to training. And how are you going to improve as a player if you don't enjoy going to training? How are you going to perform at your best if you're not going to enjoy it? So I remember Terry Venables with our national team was brilliant. I think he was a very good man manager. Plus tactically, I thought he was very good as well. Learned quite a bit off of him. Gus Hiddink, he was different. Very, very. He was ruthless. But he had us for a short period of time, so he got us super fit. Very ruthless in the way he used to act. But you could see what he was trying to achieve out of it, and especially now looking back, as a coach, put your coach's hat on, you can see why he did certain things. But probably the one that I enjoyed playing for the most was he was a Mexican national team coach a couple of times. He coached in the World Cup for them in 2002 and I think 2014 for Mexico. But I had him at Osasuna for 3 years, and he was someone that he had a good assistant with him, good conditioning coach, and he was. I loved going to training every day. I felt that I was improving, and this is at the age of 28, 29. Yeah. I felt like I was improving every day I went to training, and when I was going through a tough time, he backed me, and I just felt that was, that's what a coach should be. He should be able to take the pressure off a player, make sure a player enjoys the environment that he's in, and then I'm sure you'll get the best out of your team, but also your individuals, and that's probably something that he did really well.
Yeah. Hey, while you're talking about him and playing Osasuna, sorry to go back to your playing career, but
that's right.
I can't even begin to imagine how imposing it must be as an away team playing against Real Madrid in the Bernabeu. But you guys beat them 3-0 there.
Yeah,
can you remember that day?
Yeah, I do remember it. It was. I remember the bus trip home. We were just we couldn't believe it. The only thing about that game there is that we won 3-0, and we were so excited. It was like our final, and the last 5 games of the season, we didn't win one game. We lost all 5. I think we were lucky we were in safe and we're in a good position on the table. But yeah, it was. I didn't feel that it was imposing, and I'm sure my teammates didn't either, because of the confidence the coach gave us, and I think that was important. I think it's important as a coach, even if you're feeling some nerves, that you don't show the players that you are. And you'll see some coaches before a game, they'll give their team talk and then they'll walk out of the change room and you won't see them again, because that's a way of them not imposing their sort of pre-match nerves on the players and letting them relax and letting the players. So he was very good at motivational team talks before a game, and it would have been that I can't remember exactly what the team talk was, but maybe they think they're the best in the world, but you can show them as a team we're a lot better than them. They've got the Galacticos, but they're more individual. All those things he probably played into, and then you're walking in, and a lot of things that he did say is go out there and enjoy it. You're playing in a stadium that's 90,000 people, and the history in this stadium. How can you not enjoy it? And so you're going out there and not feeling the pressure. So that's imposing. I think once you step back and think, well, they had Zidane, they had Figo, they had Roberto Carlos, David Beckham, Raul. I'm going, how the hell did we win that game? But we obviously did.
Some win that. Okay, let's keep on going then. So, to you, what is coaching?
Coaching is teaching. It definitely is. Coaching is trying to get the best and improving not only the team, is also each individual. If you can do that, then that you're in the right direction. So people see success in different ways. A lot of people see success only when you win. But there's so many times when you're coaching and you see your team play and you go, okay, even though we didn't get the win or the result we wanted, we're on the right track, because these are our team structures. I could see were good, and we're improving in that aspect. And so I think that coaching has many aspects, especially when you're coaching junior level or the youth team. The result isn't as important. When you get into first team, the result is a lot more important. But the basic principles shouldn't really change. You're there to help the team improve and try and improve as all your individual players. That's not always going to be easy, but you're there to help do that.
Yeah. No, I like that. I'm curious. I'd love to get your opinion here. I was listening to a podcast driving into the studio to catch up with Ralph 3 or 4 weeks ago, listening to a business podcast. And I can't remember the bloke's name, but he was talking about the difference between aspiration and capability. And I really like that. And I thought, because as coaches, we've all got this in our head. We've got this dream way that we'd love to play. Maybe it's everyone wants to play like Manchester City right now or whatever. But the truth is, whilst we might want to play that way, we're at this club with this team, with this group of players, with this budget today. And what's our capability? So where do you sit on all that, about this great aspiration and philosophy of, I want to do this, but I'm here right now?
That's really important, I feel, because, everyone has a philosophy, and I think you should. I think there should be, the way you like your teams to play. Look, I like my teams to play a certain way because I believe that's the best way to win football games. But then, sometimes you have to see what's at your disposal, like you said, not only players, but your budget, your where you're coming from as a club, where they were the season before, and it's a process in trying to get them there. So if you have got players that aren't necessarily lightning quick, you're not up top, especially. You're probably not going to play a fast game of football. You're probably not going to play that sort of a counter-attacking, or you're not going to have a striker like Werner running in behind. You have to sort of change your style a little bit sometimes. I think it's really important to understand what group you're working with. And sometimes, what club you're going to, it might not suit what you feel is the way that you want to play your football. But yeah, I don't think that you can say, this is the way I want to play, and this is the only way I want to play. Even the best coaches in the world, you look at Guardiola, he's done it, now in 3 different countries. And if you look from when he was at Barcelona to when he went to Bayern Munich, he did change and sort of had to adapt to the players and the country he was in. And that's why I think he's so good, because he's able to adapt.
Yeah, adaptation. How good's that? I do really enjoy that. I think one of the flaws in the game, particularly in Australia, because that's where I live, is that coaches by nature have to be innovative. There's no coach ever went in losing 2 or 3-0 at half time and said, "Hey guys, just keep doing the same thing."
Yeah.
And you said at the start, you get a youth team and you don't have an assistant coach and you don't have a team manager, so you're carrying balls and trying to work out where you're training. By nature, we're innovative people, and I just one of my wishes is that the suits in football would realise just how much help they can get from coaches and their ability to be creative and think outside the box.
Yeah, you definitely have to think outside the box, and the thing is, it's not only games or through a season or in pre-season. It's actually every day. You have to adapt to certain situations every day, and most coaches are very creative, and they'll still have their processes and they'll have their structures, but they know that sometimes you have to tweak that a little bit, or else it's not going to work. You can't say the possession, for instance, we're going to do a 7v7 plus 3 bounces in the one on either end and one in the middle in this dimension. If you see it's not working, you might have to open it up a little bit. If you see it's working too well, you might have to close the space a little bit. There's things that you get a feel of, and you have to be creative like that. So, you can't just say, this is the meters that we're going to do it in, and that always works. It depends on what players you have, depends on the pitch, depends on the, if it's blowing a gale, if it's raining. So all those things that, come into play.
Yeah. You're listening to the Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media, the podcast professionals. We're here today with John Aloisi, talking football and coaching and life in general, learning a lot. Johnny, let's move ahead. You had, I think you might still be one of the only Aussies to have played in the English Premier League, in Serie A, and in La Liga. 15 years as a pro in Europe is an awful long time, and you did your coach education in Europe as well. Do you think, sorry, so let's stick with the playing to start with. Do you think coaching in Europe is different from coaching in Australia?
Coaching in each country in Europe is different. I would say back in when I was in Italy, for instance, that was the first time I actually saw that the football director, you can say technical director, had majority of the say on, if not all the say on, which players sign for the football club. And the coach is there just the coach. That's why they were called coaches. And then, when I went to Europe, the UK, in England, the managers were the ones that overlooked all of that. They overlooked the football department. That's why they were called managers. And then their coaches would do a lot of the coaching sessions. And then, in Spain, it was a bit similar to Italy. And then here in Australia, I think it's really important. You can have, your football directors or technical directors, but the way the salary cap works, and the coach needs to be on top of who he's signing. He can't just rely on the technical director bringing players in here, because you're over in Europe, you can actually loan those players out if the coach doesn't want them, or you can sell those players if the coach isn't playing them, or if they are playing well. Whereas in Australia, you've got a salary cap, you're stuck with that group majority of the season. Yeah. So that's why I think it's very important. So it is different from coaching in Australia. Coaching in Australia, I think that you need to try and be probably a better man manager, what you do have to be over in Europe, because in Europe, like I said before, it's very easy to get rid of a player and bring another player in, because that's what's done over there. So if a player's not performing, he's out, another one will come in. Whereas here, if player's not performing, or how can we get him to perform better? So I think that it probably gives you more of an all-round base how to coach here. Whereas over there, it's more coaching on the pitch day to day, and let the other people do their job.
Yeah. How about then in coach education, John? You did most of your coach education in Europe and then finished that with your pro license here. Did you see or feel a difference in that, in the way coaches are educated?
Over there, it was, especially at the start, it was very, you actually learn the basic principles. And, I can't comment too much about what the CB and A are like here now, or what they were like 10 years ago when I was starting out to do my coaching courses. But I did hear here there was very much, we'll coach you and teach you in educating a 4-3-3 system, because that's the system we want all our juniors to play. So we're going to get you to be able to do it to a certain level. So when you go back to your clubs or your academies or your NTC programs, this is the way that we're teaching. Whereas over there, when I was doing it in the UK, it was very broad. It was more about, all right, so you're coaching a team with 3 at the back, and you're coming up a 4-4-2 system, and they're pressing you. How do you outplay that press in the back third? And so you have to come up with a training session and do that. And so I found it really helpful that I was learning different systems, different styles. I was also chatting, lucky enough to, your Phil Nevilles and that were on my course, and, players that played under really great managers. And so, I felt that was helpful. But the coach education over there, I think it gave you a really broad thing, because they didn't say your philosophy has to be this. You have your philosophy, but we're going to be here to help you and guide you for a sense on what you want to do. One thing that I picked up there quite a bit was where you stand on the field, on the training field, how to see, the majority of the play. Don't be standing in the middle that you can't see what's going on around you. And they would mic you up, they would film you, they would bring you back inside and then show you, what you did really well and what you didn't do as well as, and when to stop, when to step in, how often you can do that. And I know they do that on our coach education here, but I found it really helpful, the coaching education over there.
Yeah, thanks for that. Do you or have you had a coaching mentor? Someone that you can call and say, hey, listen, this is what's happening. You got a solution for me?
Yeah, probably not when I was at Melbourne Heart. I used to call Ron a bit, Ron Smith, and sometimes it's good to have someone that's away as well, because then they're seeing things from a different angle and perspective. So when you're involved, sometimes you can get a little bit blinded in terms of, you're seeing it this way because that's what you're trying to do, but someone that's from a distance can give you a little bit more of a different view. And also Ange Postecoglou's helped me quite a bit, especially after, not during those Melbourne Heart days because I was coaching against him. He was at Melbourne Victory at that stage. But when he stepped into the national team role, and I was away from Melbourne Heart, I caught up with him a number of times, and I still call him now if there's a coaching position that's come available. What do you think? This is what the club are looking at doing. Do you think it's the right opportunity for me, or whatever it is? It can be anything. And it's good to hear someone that's gone through different experiences and what they feel. At the end of the day, you make the final decision. But definitely a mentor is very helpful, and I think very important.
Yeah. Why do you think it's important?
I think it's important because a lot of these, and you're talking about experienced coaches, and it can be just experience, in other fields as well. That they can also explain to you, the way your messaging, the way you're talking to the media, why you're doing that. Ask you questions. What are you trying to get across? They might have been through similar experiences than you, so why wouldn't you ask someone that's gone through it and been through those experiences, what they did, what they learned from it. And I still do it today. I'll go visit different codes as well, and sit down and speak to their coaches. Not that I need to copy or need to, but I think it's good to keep on learning and broadening your mind. Whenever at the moment, no, with COVID, but I'll go overseas and visit coaches over there and just pick their brain. But I think it's important because a lot of coaches are willing to help fellow coaches. And I think that it's a difficult field to be in, as you know. And I think that sometimes it can be a lonely position, because when you're the head coach of an actual football club, that a lot of the time you're alone. You're the one that would making the final decision, and it's always good to speak to someone outside, because you're not always going to get the truth from within.
No, and I think there's as a wise man said, there's a big difference between knowledge and wisdom. And the difference between the two is making a whole lot of mistakes that sometimes you have to make yourself, and sometimes you don't, because you've got a confidant or mentor that can say, hey, listen, I did that for 2 years, banged my head against the brick wall, and all I did was got a sore head, but I did find a solution. And sometimes you go, I know a couple of times when I was coaching, I'd ring Ronnie and go, I can't solve this. He said, yeah, that used to happen to me, and I do this and this, and you go, no, it can't be that simple.
Yeah.
And it can be that. It can be that simple. No, it's good. Does your role as an armchair coach or a pundit, does that help refine your coaching? You're watching an awful lot of football. You're talking about an awful lot of football. Do you think that's helped you understand the game better?
Yeah, definitely. Watching a lot of football and actually analyzing a lot of football, and sometimes when you're in coaching and you're coaching a team and you're coaching, let's say in the A League, for instance, there's certain systems that you're seeing week in, week out, and you haven't got time to, like, I'm not saying broaden your knowledge, but sometimes stepping back and doing what I'm doing now, you're seeing completely different styles of football, like in England, in Spain, in Italy, in the Bundesliga, and you go, all right, what could work if I took a team again, or what would I do against this system? I didn't think about that when I was playing against a 5-3-2 or whatever it is. I now understand why he was trying to do that, and so there's things that when you're sitting back and analyzing a lot of football and watching a lot of football that you might see in a different light, and also just your messaging. So when you're on TV, you have to be very concise. You have to be very clear with your messaging. It's no different to coaching. You have to be very clear. You don't want to confuse your players, and you don't want to confuse your audience, because if you start to talk and then you're going around in circles, people start to not understand what you're saying. So I find that very helpful as well.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. No, thanks. You mentioned coaches from other sports. That's one of the questions here. Has they influenced you when I was coaching at the AIS? You're obviously surrounded by coaches from other sports. You meet regularly with them. You become used to talking to them, and I think you found that it doesn't really matter what the sport is. Just the fact that they've been responsible for helping to develop athletes, players and teams is just, there's a great source of wisdom there all the time, isn't there?
There definitely is. And sometimes when you stick to just your like what your code, for instance, I'll go overseas and visit coaches over there, and over there it's very they can be like that. They're what they say has to go. If a player doesn't follow, he's out of the team. Whereas, like I said here, it's a little bit different. You need to try and get the best out of the people that are in your squad. So when I went to go visit AFL clubs, when they were doing analysis, I was like very interested in how they were doing it, because they had the Socratic approach. The Socrates, the old philosopher, was ask them questions. Ask them in this situation within our structures, what would you do, and try and lead the players into the right answer, because that way you're also engaging with the players. You're not just talking through a 15-minute preview or review of a game. You're actually engaging, and they're learning at the same time. So I found that really good, and I brought that with me into when I would do my analysis, and I found it very helpful, not only for myself but also the players, because all right, they're getting it, they're understanding it. They just didn't see that situation on the field, and then there might be a reason why, and they can come up with a reason why, and so those little things there. There's things that they do in other codes and in other sports that we can't bring in to ours, because it's a different culture, different environment, different money that they're dealing with. So, but you can definitely learn from other sports, definitely.
No doubt. Changing tack again, John. You walked away from Brisbane Roar as a coach. You were sacked at Melbourne Heart. That first time that happens, I know that you haven't been a manager until that's happened, but that's a tough place to be. So I guess the question is, how important is resilience for coaches, and do you think that's something that can be developed?
It definitely can be developed, and it developed through experiences. You develop resilience from, and I think it's important to develop resilience from an early age. You see a lot of players that make it to a high level have had setbacks as they were kids. And Arsene Wenger's come out and said that he believes that the best players and the ones that end up making it and not only just get there and play a few games and then go away. The ones that play 10 to 15 years at a professional level are the ones that had setbacks when they were kids, whatever they may be. And so it's the same in coaching. You need to be resilient. There's nothing, and you know what it's like when you lose a football game, and you could be so low, and you just go, this just feels terrible. And then, but the next day you need to walk in and showing that you've got the answers, and that you want to lead this group and lead this club and this team. So, but when you do get the sack, it's again, you get the initial people, calling, sending texts, wish you all the best, and trying to be there, supportive to you. But that quickly goes away, and you're left alone again. You're left by yourself, and then you start questioning, well, what could have I done? What do I do? How do I? And so those things there. It is a tough period to be, when you've been sacked and not in the job that you love doing, because you're going from a very clear structure in your daily structure and routine to having no structure, no routine.
Yeah.
And that can mentally, affect you as well. So it's very important to have good support with your family. And I'm lucky that I do have, a supportive family. And also, you find those mentors that you can, lean towards and speak to them about it, because, they might have been through similar situations. And, David Parkin, who is a legendary AFL coach, ex-AFL coach, he lived 2-3 doors down and from me. And, what a amazing person, but, something he didn't have to do that will stay with me. He knocked on my door, let's go have a coffee, and to start chatting about my time, what I've got to look forward to, his experiences. Then he one of the books that he co-wrote with someone, he gave it to me and signed. And whenever you want to have a chat, come and knock on my door. And so those things do help, but you do need to have resilience, that's for sure.
Yeah. How did you cope physically? In doing the research here, I worked out we shared a few things. We both like scoring goals.
Yeah.
We both were born on the 5th of February.
Oh, I didn't know that one. That's a good one.
And we're both in the zipper club. We both had our chests cracked open and had surgeons fix up or replace valves in our chest. That for me was intriguing, because I'd never had a sort of serious injury or anything prior to that. How did you cope with a different sort of resilience there? Because that's pretty invasive surgery.
Yeah, well, it's invasive surgery, and plus going into that surgery, it's a scary time, because you don't know if you're going to come out of it. You don't know how you're going to come out of it, and then all thoughts cross your mind. But it was I had not a lot of time to think about it, because I only had probably less than a week, because when I found out that I had this issue, they booked me in the next week to get the surgery done. So it was funny, because I went back to sort of my playing days and my coaching experiences, and started to how do I clear my mind to get through this, and and what do I do to get through not only this initial scary bit, the operation and the post-operation, and try and put a bit of structure towards all that as well. So I wrote down, in my notepad that, I was already grateful that the surgeon was able to repair my mitral valve, and grateful for, recovering really well from surgery, and my rehab was, I feel fitter than I ever have. And this is before I went into the surgery. So whenever I start to get those doubts in my mind of how I'm going to go, am I going to see my kids again? I'll read those, it was like 5 or 6 affirmations and vision, what I wanted out of the surgery. And that helped me a lot, because it was a scary period, because as you don't expect it, and all of a sudden, you're having a major operation.
Yeah. No, I like that, and I love that gratitude's a big part of that. Taking time to think of all the things that we're thankful for as a great power, and I don't know. I found that to be quite self-healing at times. So yeah, good on you, John. Good to see you looking so fit and healthy as well. So all right, moving on. What have been some of your most enjoyable moments as a coach?
Oh, you know what? Obviously, winning football games is the most enjoyable thing. But the day to day I found really enjoyable. I love being on the pitch with the players and getting them to actually understand what your structures and the way you want the team to play, and then when you see it happen on game day and see players and the team improving, that's also very satisfying. But the most enjoyable one is probably, there's a couple of games that really stood out. I think it was against Melbourne Victory, actually. It was one of the probably the minor semi-final was at Suncorp. We were nil all, so we finished third that season and they finished sixth. So you're expected to win, especially at home. And who pops up with about 5 minutes to go is and Victory were down to 10 men, mind you. Besar Barisha, he pops up all alone in the penalty box and scores off the corner. I'm like, how the hell did that happen? So within it was virtually straight after the kickoff, we went down the other end and scored. And then with only a minute remaining, Thomas Broich scored an unbelievable header, and just the excitement of it all, and just it was a great feeling. It wasn't the grand final, but it felt like the way it happened, and those things there are highlights, of course. But then seeing individuals go on to be even better players from when you first arrived, and players still contacting you and talking to you, and that's also a good feeling, and you can only have that if there's the respect there, if they respected you first as a coach and then as a person, because it's not only results on the field, you're also helping individuals become better people, and I think that's important as well.
So is that success for you? Is that what success looks like?
Yeah, but that success doesn't always give you another job or get you another job. But you know what? I'm very clear in my values and my principles that and what I would like my group and my the people that I'm working with to behave like, and and you do get a good feeling when that people respond and say, what a good person, a player that you're coaching, and when they go visit, the local community or the schools, and when you're getting positive feedback, that does feel good. That is success. I don't care what anyone says. The success is not always just winning football games. It's also the way you're representing your club, the game, because we're still here to grow the game in Australia. And then I always say that when I set foot into a club, you're representing not only the club, you're representing the game, yourself and your family. And so straight away, a player will walk a little bit different. When he's out, he'll think twice about doing something really stupid. So I think it's important that you do have those values.
Yeah. I like that. Speaking of values and family, which is obviously key to you, you've got to play with your brother Ross. I think Adelaide City in the early days. Yep. I think you might have had a game or two with the Socceroos together.
We had one game together with the Socceroos, but I wouldn't say that I went off and he went on when I was off.
Aloisi on, Aloisi off. No. Yeah. But you've worked together as well at Brisbane. He's been your assistant. That I'm not quite sure. I don't have a brother, but I'm sure that must bring you some great joy to be able to work together as well.
Yeah, it did. A lot of people question, how can you work with your brother? That would be a little bit difficult because, he's older than you. That could be a little bit. Um, how does he always go when you're sort of leading the group, and he's there to assist you? But it was great because the one thing that I was able to do with my brother, and it doesn't always happen, is that behind closed doors we could have a really good discussion about what we were doing at the club, and he could be very honest because he's not afraid to be honest to his brother. Whereas sometimes you could go with other coaches, they might be a little bit afraid to. But once we stepped out of the environment of being in an office, and we went back out and to open the door, and he was always going to back what we were trying to do together because we're always on the same page after that. And I think we haven't spoken about this, but I think that yourself what your strengths are. You should end up finding out what your strengths are, and also know what weaknesses you might have. And so me and my brother are very different in terms of our characters, but that can also be a good advantage for you. So I enjoyed working with him. Whether we'll end up working together in the future, you just don't know. But I think my brother is good enough, and he's showing now that he's working with Carl at Adelaide United. It's good for him to step out of working with his brother, sort of that shadow, because I think he will be a great head coach if he wants to. And it's an opportunity to say, all right, this is Ross Aloisi as Ross, and not working for John.
Yeah. Great for him right now. I think with Kyle at Adelaide, is obviously not a new coach, but new into the A-League as a coach. So to have someone, and I don't think the A-League's done this particularly well, to have someone of Ross's experience around him as an assistant, I think is a fantastic asset to have.
And there's things that Ross has experienced that Carl hasn't experienced because Ross has been around, and we don't do that enough. And I agree with you. I think that and I'll talk about AFL because they're probably the clubs, the different sport that I visited the most. They do get coaches back in that have been head coaches, and they get them back into certain roles within the football club and within the football department. And I think it can go a long way to actually because they will have their experiences and what they've been through, and that we don't do that. Where as soon as a head coach is out of a job, unless another head coaching role comes along, there's no other job for him. So that's I agree with you that we don't probably do that enough.
All right, mate, we're almost done. If you have one piece of wisdom that you could pass on to coaches, whether they be young coaches, more experienced coaches, what would that be?
The biggest thing is that, you have to be passionate about it. That's 100%. Because if you're not passionate about coaching, then you're in the wrong business. Because there's so many things to it. It's a tough job. And I think be clear in your decisions. I think that, and why I say that is because, sometimes and we spoke about it before, if you're coaching just to keep a job, then your decision making isn't always going to be clear. But if you're coaching because and your decisions are very clear, if I make this decision, if we lose the game of football, I could lose my job, but I know that was my decision. Don't go off with someone else, coming into you. So, unless it's good advice from someone that you trust. But what I mean by that is, if you're, and supporters are very important. Don't get me wrong, they are, and we've noticed this in the past year and a half. Games without supporters can be pretty dull. Supporters mean everything to the game. But also you have to understand the supporters will get on your back or the team's back when the team's not winning. But you can't always listen to them when they're, having a go or letting their anger go on you, because if you do, you end up be sitting with them in a very near future. So, you have to try and block that out. But coaching at any level is you have to love it and be passionate about it. Coaching kids level is I think no different to coaching senior level. You're there for the individual and the team. It's not about you.
Yeah.
It should never be about the coach. It has to be about getting the best out of the individual at a younger level, improving those players, and getting to the the best they can be. And that's no different when you're at senior level.
Yeah.
You look at Tuchel now at Chelsea. He's getting the best out of each individual. He's improved nearly each individual over the last 3 or 4 months, and that's incredible to do so in such a quick period of time. But that's no different to coaching kids.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful place to leave it, talking about the success of Chelsea, unless that continues across the weekend. John Aloisi, thanks very much, mate. Really appreciate your time, your knowledge and your wisdom.
Thanks for having me on.
Cheers, Johnny. You've been listening to Football Coaches Australia, Football Coaching Life, brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media the Podcast Professionals. If you've enjoyed today's show, please log on to footballcoachesoz.org.au. Renew your membership, buy a membership, just have a look around the different resources. You have a great day.